Also, I found out later in life, but when I became a Reiki master, my mom told me that when I was little, whenever somebody said that there was somebody who was hurting, like they had a headache or something like that, and like maybe the age 2 or 3, I would say, let me put my hands on you. So I think I came in a little bit with that healing energy from previous lives or whatever. Kabbalah to me is a way of life, right? And I've studied metaphysical Kabbalah, and I've studied it through through the Jewish tradition, and there are different ways that they come to it, but it's all pointing to the same thing. What I love about it is that it really is something that you can apply to your life on a day-to-day basis. It's not some esoteric. It can be, right? It can be very esoteric, but you can also make it very practical and apply it to your life. We say in Zen that a good situation can be a bad situation, and a bad situation can be a good situation. You don't really know, right? So, and when it comes to spiritual practice, sometimes it's the bad situation that leads you to step into your spiritual practice more. And it's really that almost everything that we do in human energy is counterclockwise, right? And it's really because we're a reflection of the divine. So the divine moves in a clockwise direction, and then we're a reflection of that. But when we're aligned, then we can move in the same direction. The reality is, enlightenment is about being fully present, right? And just being in this moment. There is light, there is shadow, and the shadow can help us expand our light, right? And I believe that's its purpose, right? That it's really here not to hurt us, but to push us to expand our light. Being a spiritual guide, I see myself as a channel and a vessel to be used by the spiritual realms.
I'm sitting with Sonya Shelton. She's a guide at the center of the 7 rays. How did this journey of yours start?
To get where I am as a guide?
Get where you are as a guide, your spiritual journey, your healing journey.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I kind of grew up with parents that were very spiritual. It might seem from the outside that they were religious, but because I grew up Episcopalian. I think my dad was raised Baptist. My mom was raised Catholic. So they were trying to find something that was a little bit in the middle. But while I was growing up, whenever there was something new church, they would find out about a different religion, we would go and check it out, right? And so I kind of grew up with this exploration openness around spirituality. Also, I found out later in life, but when I became a Reiki master, my mom told me that when I was little, whenever somebody said that there was somebody who was hurting, like they had a headache or something like that, and like maybe the age 2 or 3, I would say, let me put my hands on you. So I think I came in a little bit with that healing energy from previous lives or whatever, right? So, and then when I went into college, I sort of didn't really connect with religion as much anymore. And so I kind of went on this spiritual journey of checking out different types of faiths, and ended it with nothing really resonated with me. So I decided that this is probably the early 20s. I decided that I was a spiritual person without a religion, and just kind of developed my own path. And that went for about 10 years. And then I realized that I had taken myself as far as I could go. And I started going on a journey again to explore, and connected with Zen Buddhism. And so I still practice that today. I'm a teacher in that tradition, and it felt like home. And then along that path, I came across a woman who was a spiritual intuitive, and I got a reading from her, and she said, "Oh, you need to join a mystery school." And I was like, I don't know what that is. Right. So I was like, Zen's my thing. I'm happy there. And she said, no, I think Zen's not for everybody. And there's something that the mystery school that will give you that you can offer to anybody. And so ended up kind of finding a mystery school, training in that tradition. And so So I still do both. I do more metaphysics, and then with some Kabbalah, and then Zen as well. And most of my public work that I do at Center of the Seven Rays is around the metaphysical stuff and healing.
How do you balance all this? Because you have different spiritual practices you could turn to. At one point, do you do one, or you can do some throughout the day or week as needed?
I kind of look at it like a toolbox, right? So in addition to Center of the Seven Rays, I'm also a coach and a consultant. And I approach everything I do like this, which is like I have all of these tools at my disposal, and depending on the situation, I can pull what's needed in that moment. So I don't feel like I have to go, okay, I'm going to do this right now, and then I'm going to switch, and I'm going to do this right now. It's kind of like going through life. What's the tool I need right in this moment, either for somebody I'm working with or for myself, either way.
That makes a lot of sense. And you said you were a Reiki master. What lineage did you train in, and how do you apply that to yourself or others?
Yeah, so I've done two, and I did Ensophic Reiki as well as Usui Reiki. And so a friend of mine was a Reiki master, and she said it started with her offering some classes, and she was like, hey, and I'd never even heard of it before, right? And she said, oh, would you be interested in taking a class with me? I was like, yeah, sure, I'll check it out, right? And so I could feel the energy coming through, and it felt, again, kind of like home. And I started it with just not trying to create a business out of it or anything like that. It was, somebody, almost like I did when I was a kid, right? Right? Like somebody needs something. Oh, let me put my hands on you, right? And then it's kind of weaved in and out of the things that I do. When you're attuned, as you know, right? Because that's one of your specialties. It sort of flows through everything you do. That energy comes through.
Yeah, and it's interesting you said you were doing something like that even before you took the class, because I've had a few students say they were doing basically that anyways, without even taking a class, just knowing what to do, where to put their hands. They did admit like Reiki made their energy stronger afterwards, and they were still glad they took it because they gave them structure for what they were already doing. But at the same time, it's interesting how people have an intuition as well, like on what to do. It's a natural method.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I agree with that. I think it's really about the training helps you be able to focus it and direct it, which feels like more powerful. And then, as I've gone through initiations and things like that, my Reiki energy has also grown in power with those things as well.
Oh, that's great. So you felt it did get stronger with a formal training.
Yes, absolutely.
And Kabbalah, how has that helped you, and how do you apply that in your life?
Wow.
I know, it's a complex subject.
It's a big question.
It could be, you could condense it or only answer one part of it if you want, because I know that's a complicated subject.
Yeah. And I think that's how I'll answer it, is that the Kabbalah to me is a way of life, right? And I've studied metaphysical Kabbalah, and I've studied it through, through the Jewish tradition, and there are, different ways that they come to it, but it's all pointing to the same thing. And what I love about it is that it really is something that you can apply to your life on a day-to-day basis. It's not some esoteric, it can be, right? It can be very esoteric, but you can also make it very practical and apply it to your life. And then also just being able to sort your mind, right? Right.
Yeah.
Like it's one of the best tools to be able to sort your mind and start to make that subconscious more conscious and clean out the stuff you don't need that's draining your energy. Yeah, I love Kabbalah.
That was a great answer, and some great points too. You mentioned how there's a few different lineages. There's Kabbalah with a Q, which is more Hermetic one. Then there's more the Jewish mysticism. And even that, there's different practices depending on what school you go to. So there's definitely different perspectives you could have, different ways of studying it. And that was how I look at it too, because it's very comprehensive. You can apply it to a lot of things in your life. You can make it more esoteric or very practical, very day-to-day based. It's really helped me, but at the same time, sometimes I've dove too deep in it, and I realized I had to come back, and not to avoid my other practices as well, because they still work too. At this point, I still haven't found one be-all, end-all. I really found, like you mentioned earlier, the balance is the best, and there's different tools you could take out at different times depending on what situations arise or what challenges you're going through, what stage you're leveling up to. But it's certainly been an interesting journey, so thank you for explaining how that was for you. And now the mystery school. When you first started, what was the first class you took and what was your impression of it?
The first thing I did was an Adam Kadmon activation or DNA activation, which sort of helps to just like plug you back in to your higher self, plug you back into your spirit. So you have more access to that intuition. I do it for other people now, and it's kind of hard to explain what it does because it's kind of like wherever in your life you need more connection to your intuition or more connection to flow, that's where it's going to go, right? So it's not like, oh, this is what it does for you, right? Right. And then, as I mentioned, this woman, this intuitive has said, you need to join a mystery school. So I really had no idea what I was walking into or why. And I called somebody that I found and said, another guide. And I said, I'm supposed to join a mystery school. How do I do that? Right. Right. She was like, well, the first step is this activation. And then you take this initiation class. And it's like an empowerment workshop. And so that was the first class I took, which is great because it helped give me sort of the foundations of mystery school teachings, some rituals that I could do to, on a daily basis to be able to bring more energy into my life, really be able to work with energy, kind of like we were talking about with the Reiki classes. It wasn't that I didn't have access to that energy before through my Zen practices and other things that I had done. It was more about how can I focus that energy, and then how can I help other people focus their energy and step into their own power.
When you did that first activation, you felt a shift?
The activation, it's very subtle and kind of gradual. So I did things so fast that it was kind of hard for me to know for myself what the difference was. But I've seen it in other people that I've worked with, how it works more than I saw with myself because I just did, it was like activation and then into the empowerment class with initiation. And so I really didn't have enough time to see what the activation did.
That was how mine was as well. My first two, I believe they were life and spirit activations. Mine were more gradual. I know some can be really intense. Other healing modalities have been intense for me, but for those like the mystery school ones, the early ones were more subtle. But I do think they did something for sure because like looking back on it, it did start a different chapter on my spiritual and healing journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you also brought up another great point. Sometimes it's good to space things out. I know when I was starting, I was so excited and I just wanted to kind of bang things out early on. But I've had clients, even as soon as a few months ago, one was coming out of the area and she wanted to do like up to 5 healing modalities in one day. And I understood because she's coming from far away, but I told her, you'll have much more benefit if you split them up even over 2 days, preferably even more. But the problem is if you do them all in a row or all at once, you don't know which one's doing what. Some can have some similar effects and you wonder which one do you give credit for, which is helping you. How would you recommend for someone who's coming to you for healing modalities or activations? Do you recommend they split them up? There's some they can do on the same day, or it depends on the person?
Yes, all of the above, right? So it does depend on the person. I think, and then there's some types of healing modalities that not only that is important for you to be able to discern what it did for you, but also like if you think about Western medicine, if somebody gives you medication for something, you don't want to take the whole bottle, right. So because your body's not going to be able to handle that, right?
Well,
and
most people don't want to take the whole bottle.
Right.
Healthy people don't. Jokes aside.
Yes. So the It's the same thing with healing, right? Your energy body needs time to recover, right? And so there's some modalities you really can't do back to back because it's going to cause more damage than it's going to cause healing. So it's just important to know, for the practitioner to know what those are, and set those expectations, but also, giving you a chance to integrate, right? So it's like, okay, I had this happen. I had this healing. I had this activation. Now I need to integrate this and really be able, just like we were talking about with Kabbalah, really be able to see and apply this in my life, this new energy that I have. And then not just to see what it does for me, but also to be able to make it part of my life so I don't have to go back and get it done again.
That's a great perspective. And as you mentioned with Kabbalah, one of the things it's helped me with is it's okay if I can't identify something in the moment. It's better not to label, oh, this is good, this is bad. If it's difficult, just label that way. This is a difficulty. This is what I'm going through now. And then just sit through it. And then when you look back on it, sometimes it might be a while. Sometimes it's months. It might be a year. Sometimes it might be 5 or 10 years. But you understand, okay, that's why I had to go through that. But if you just label it right when you're going through it, you might not be able to make the most of it. And that's another part of Kabbalah is trying to hold off on the reactive behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. So we say in Zen that a good situation can be a bad situation and a bad situation can be a good situation. You don't really know. When it comes to spiritual practice, sometimes it's the bad situation that leads you to step into your spiritual practice more. So when things are going great, that's usually when people are most likely to drop it. right. So sometimes that bad situation comes in, or what you think is a bad situation is actually coming in to help you to get back on track.
Yeah, there were some Buddhist teachers I listened to because that was how I started my spiritual journey. Well, it's technically Taoism, but I couldn't find enough actual places to practice it. And I had a friend who was getting into Buddhism. He had a saying, good, bad, who knows? Because he would tell stories about how something was bad short-term, but ended up being great long-term. It could be leading you on the path you're supposed to be on. And not to say it's not a difficulty and it's not what you would call good in the moment. But as you also said, it's those difficult moments that really lead to going deeper spiritually. Because if you were just winning the lottery every week, there's not much drive to grow as a person. You would just be thinking of ways to, what should I do with this money? But it's those really hard moments where sometimes we don't have the answers that can cause us to look elsewhere for either guidance or just to try to figure out different ways of approaching things. Like for myself, just realizing the old way that I did something isn't working. Maybe I should turn to some other source to see if I can handle it better or how I can transmute this.
Yeah, and I always think about like what can we learn from nature in these kinds of situations, right? So as a plant is growing, it has to struggle to push through the earth, right? To be able to get out to the sun, right? And then, maybe it's going to have to deal with the elements, rainstorms, wind, really hot weather. There's always some challenge that it has to deal with, right? To grow, right? And all of these things help it grow and into whatever it's going to be, right? And so why would it be different for us?
Exactly. And at the mystery school, I took some sacred geometry classes because I was really interested in that. And it's hard to find good schools for sacred geometry. I mean, there's like YouTube videos and stuff, but that's what I appreciated about the mystery school was they had some structure to sacred geometry. This is where you could start as a beginner. Did you like the sacred geometry? Because you can also teach it as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and it's sacred geometry, similar to Kabbalah, is one of those things that you can continue to grow in and learn from. like there's no end to it, right? Right. Like you can just keep going and going and going. Once you understand the fundamentals, you can, continue to explore those and go deeper for yourself on where it leads you. And one of the things I love about, I think that's connected me, sacred geometry has really connected me to beauty, and not to take it for granted and to see the sacred in it. That's all around us.
Yeah. I've seen breakdowns of basically everything in the universe, and everything operates by sacred geometry. They'll break down structures of animals and plants and how their shapes are sacred geometry. And you might not see it when they're covered in feathers, but then you like see the diagram and you're like, oh, wow. And also everything that's going on in the universe. And was it you who said nature moves in a sacred geometry direction?
Yeah.
Clockwise?
Right.
That was crazy. I never thought about that, but you were the one who told me that. And then when I observed, it really does do that. And it shows how humans, before we know better or it's brought to our attention, we can be out of sync with nature.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's really that, almost everything that we do in human energy is counterclockwise, right? And it's really because we're a reflection of the divine. So the divine moves in a clockwise direction, and then we're a reflection of that. But when we're aligned, then we can move in the same direction as the divine. So a little sacred geometry teaching.
Yeah, that could help people that are having difficulties if they feel they're going against the grain. It's something to check out and maybe try differently. Analyze how you're moving and make that switch. See if things go a little bit easier. And do you think that's why humanity has an incongruence with nature, because we are operating so out of sync with it right now?
Yeah, well, I think that's part of it is to, we're really have these two components to us, right? We have this physical, material component, this thing, right? And then we have the spiritual. And if we're allowing those things to work together, our life flows, right? So if we go too far to one side and we say, oh, I'm just a divine being and I'm just going to push aside anything that's physical because I'm spiritual and all the physical things are bad, right? That's sort of going too far to the other side. And then, of course, we see it probably more frequently, a big focus on the physical and not looking at the spiritual at all. And, being about money and power and all of those things. That's not the middle way either, right? It's sort of finding can we balance these two things where it's almost like walking, like one foot goes spiritual, one foot goes physical, one foot spirit, and it's like, how can we balance that so that our life flows in the right direction? It's not that life is ever going to be 100% easy, but at least we know we have the capacity to handle whatever comes to us.
That is my take on it now. I found the middle ways the best because I was too much in the physical for probably the first half of my life, because as crazy as it sounds now, I wasn't spiritual at all. And now that I am spiritual, I see people that get a little too far out there and they're just trying to transcend this existence, reach enlightenment. But the way I see it is, if that was the goal, we wouldn't be physically incarnated here. We are meant to do something while we are down here. Someone even described it as finding our oversoul and bringing it back down into our physical vessels. So we incorporate that spiritual aspect into our physical nature. Because I know for a lot of my life and where I see people now, they're just going through without any meaning or purpose, and that's really hard. And some are finding difficulties understanding why they're not finding happiness or contentment, and they have things they're told will make them happy, but they're not really finding that's true. And that's what I think adding that spiritual perspective can really help with. So you do find more to your life and discover what your journey is all about.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned spiritual people get focused on enlightenment and sort of let go of the physical. But the reality is enlightenment is about being fully present, right? And just being in this moment where you're surrounded by the physical. right? So can you appreciate every moment that way and being fully present and appreciate all of this? The people that I know, Zen masters and things that have achieved that, they're so present, right? And it's just they're 100% with you, and they're 100% with whatever they're eating, and then like whatever they're doing, they're 100% with that, right? And so I think sometimes people will say enlightenment feels like escape, going somewhere else where I don't have to deal with this, right? Right. So, and that's not enlightenment at all.
No, and that's what I've seen happen is people were calling escapism enlightenment, and it's good to go up into the ethers every now and then, sure, and get those experiences. But I think the mission is to learn from that, integrate it, and bring it back, whatever information you learn or whatever you see up there, and then bring it back and either apply it to your life or share it with others. Sometimes the best way of sharing is just by embodying it and living it.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever I teach astral travel, there's always inevitably someone who finds out, oh, I can work with galactic energies. Can I just like work with galactic energies all the time? Like, well, sure. But what's that going to do for your life? Like, what is the meaning of that for you? Or if it's something that doesn't apply to you, why spend your time there? Right?
Yeah.
right.
It's a good question to ask someone because it could be fun and also exciting to have these type of experiences when you're first starting out, or even at times if something's new, even when you've already been established on your journey. Well, I guess what happens when I was miserable before I knew I had to heal, that's why escapism can be attractive. Oh, there must be something else out there. There must be more to this. And there is more to this, but it's not just how it was portrayed to me, at least what I found, in my opinion. It's not just, oh, humanity is evil, terrible. The mission is just to leave and go to a different plane. I truly have found we can make the most while we're here. There is a point to being here. And yeah, there's challenges and difficulties. And that's another thing I found too, was because I also saw sub-spirituality being portrayed as, oh, if you do this particular lineage and get to a certain level, everything will just be light all the time, just love, and everything will be perfect. And that's certainly not what I found. And in fact, I found the higher you go on different stages of growth, the more challenging your path can be because you can handle it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really expanding your capacity, but we are here in duality, right? So there is light, there is shadow, and the shadow can help us expand our light, right? And I believe that's its purpose, right? That it's really here not to hurt us, but to push us to expand our light. And without that duality, and if we were all light all the time and we had no duality, why would we grow? right. So.
Yeah, it could be fun for a little bit just to think of yourself as a lighthouse. Oh, I'm going to shine my lights on everything and brighten it. But you're right. If we just hit the peak right away, what else is there to do? And just even for argument's sake, even if we reach the pinnacle of one practice or one modality, there's still so many other areas we can grow in. If we're the best at one type of healing, there's still other types of healing, or we can still learn about relationships, meditation, astral travel. There's so many things, and if people just kind of want to portray themselves as just a master of one thing, now I see it as being limited. Mm-hmm. There's so much more we could check out and apply, or as you talked about, getting into the teaching mode. And I actually want to ask about that. How did you transition from doing the healing or the activations to teaching them?
I kind of have, I joke that my whole spiritual path has been by Braille, right? Where I just sort of feel my way through. I don't ever have a plan. And so I just kind of follow where the energy takes me. And was when I first started, especially with mystery school. When I first started, I was like, I'm not going to be a teacher. I'm not a healer. I don't do all that stuff, right? I'm not going to be a guide. No way. But I just sort of followed the energy. And I think what I came to was, if I'm benefiting from this, why wouldn't I share it? Right. And so that was sort of how my mind was, as my mind was fighting my spiritual direction, right, of what I was going to be doing, and who I thought I was, right, that was just to say, why wouldn't you? Like, why wouldn't you share it if you're benefiting from it and other people could benefit from it instead of just relying on somebody else to do it for them?
Now that you've been doing that for a while, do you have a preference on doing the healing or the teaching, or do you like splitting them up?
Yeah, I love having an impact on people, right? So I love being able to see people step into their power, to realize the power that they have, and that comes from everything, right? It comes from even leading a meditation or doing an activation or a healing or teaching. It all sort of helps people step into their power. And that's the part that I love, is to see them step into who they really are.
Two things that really resonated with me. Well, one was the not having a plan, because there's one philosophy: we come here to transform things about ourselves, to make different choices as we grow. And I, as a kid and teenager, I used to like to plan everything out. I knew, like I was going to take this class, go to this college, get this job, make this salary. I mean, it's still good to have set intentions and things like that. But the reality is things don't always go to plan. I found if I'm too rigid, it can cause a lot of aggravation. And it's funny, there was a year on my healing journey where I just let go completely. I was just going to just take everything by chance and not plan anything. And it was an interesting practice for sure. It brought some good stuff. But then, interestingly enough, after doing a group past life regression, when I did the share, the facilitator, she said, well, you were one way, now you're the other way. Maybe you're supposed to come back a little bit and go back in the middle. And I think that's what the message was and what I did. And I found that is the best way. I've had to see both sides of the spectrum, but as we've been going back to, that balance was key for me on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely still plan in my life. And I've had to let go a little bit of that too. Just because things are moving so fast, we can't really see into the future as far as we used to be able to. But when it comes to, being a spiritual guide, I see myself as a channel and a vessel to be used by the spiritual realms. So I'll go where that's needed, right? So, and then of course, if there's a class, I plan the class and I do the class. I have a structure to it. But as far as my own journey and where I just sort of allow myself to be moved to, or for people to be moved to me where they're meant to, right? And just keep that open to flow how it needs to flow.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I've met people on this journey that don't like to make any type of plans. And I'm thinking, well, if someone made an appointment with you, you should keep that. It's good to have some, you don't want to become inconsiderate. I don't think that's the goal either, to just be a jerk with other people's time and energy. And even with some healing sessions, because I've been asked that too, like after a sound bath or something, do you plan what you're going to do, or do you just completely wing it, calling guides or something like that? And I tell them both. I think that it is good to have some structure, like if you have some focus, this is going to be relaxation. So at least you know what instruments to bring. There should be some organization, because if you just start jamming out, it could go to crazy town really fast. Even though it could be fun here or there, but it's not always going to call for that. But at the same time, like once you set the intention, then you can let go. So that way you can adjust too, because things are going to come up you can't really plan for, and you want to be able to adapt as they arise.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key word that you mentioned is intention. Absolutely have to have an intention, right? That's how you direct the energy. I think there's a danger in sort of coming into things without having an intention and just sort of letting things flow, especially when you're working with other people, because a privilege to work in someone's energy. And it's an honor to be in sacred space with them and to not take it as such, right? To have that intention of what are we doing is a disservice to them, I think.
Absolutely. And the second thing I wanted to come back to, you mentioned about teaching and healing, was being able to help other people's lives. Has that been the most rewarding aspect of doing both, or were there other benefits as well?
Yeah, I always learn something too, right? So, when you know this from being a healer, when we're bringing in that energy and healing energy for someone else, it has to go through us first, right? So we get to benefit from that. And so that's great. And then the same thing, when I'm teaching a class, people will ask questions that will push me sometimes, right? And it's like, oh, I've never been asked that question before. And how can I grow from that? And what is my perspective, or where and open up to guidance too, to say like, oh, I didn't know that before, but I got this guidance on how to answer the question. And I learned from that too.
Yeah, even the main Reiki manuals I teach out of, I'll still pick up something different every time a section's read in class. Luckily, they're pretty comprehensive. Actually, the most comprehensive I've seen so far in a Reiki class. But it's interesting, too, how the journey never ends. There's always something we can pick up. Or at the beginning of your teaching journey, you might have a different perspective on that subject 3, 5, 10 years later when you're teaching it. So there's other stuff you could possibly add to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've gone back and taken more of the fundamental beginning Kabbalah classes, and exactly what you're saying. Like, I learned something different because the person who's taking it now is a different person from the person who took it before, right? So I've grown, I've learned more, and I can see even deeper into the fundamentals almost like you can never get a master of the fundamentals enough, right? Like, keep going back to the basics. In every type of effort, you hear that over and over, like, get back to the basics, right? And I think it's true, right? Like, because you're coming back to it with more mastery every time, which deepens your mastery.
Definitely. And one of my teachers said years ago, we like to overcomplicate things. And at one point, my personal practice was getting very long. I would do one thing, then the other. It was taking between the morning and the night one, probably combined around 3 hours. And I realized, I'm enjoying this, but I'm missing out too. I'm not really living to my full potential as well. So I had to kind of analyze what's really working. What do I need? Am I using this as a crutch? And it was definitely an interesting point of introspection. But as you also said, different teachers on the same subject can give you different insights as well. Mm-hmm. We're different people. We could take the exact same course and it could mean something completely different to us at a different stage of our life when we've gone through more experiences. And with your lived experiences, as you experience more, do you feel you're able to incorporate those into your class?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I like to tell stories, right? So I'm always telling stories about how to make it tangible, right? How to make it real, things that I've experienced or things that clients have experienced. Not betraying confidentiality, of course, but to be able to say, this is how this person applied it, or this is how this person tried to apply it and didn't work, right? Yeah. So just because I feel that makes it real for people and how they can do it for themselves.
It's funny you say that because sometimes I'll have like a previous student or even a colleague, and just from observation, or they'll share that they tried something and it was a disaster. Then synchronistically in a class shortly after that, a current student will be like, oh, what if I do this? And it'll be that horrible idea someone just experienced. So it's crazy to me. Like, how does that happen timing wise? Because then it never happens again. But it's funny how it could just happen like that, where you could either experience yourself or observe from someone else and then be able to relay that to someone else. Well, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but from what I've seen or heard, maybe you want to go this other way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know the mystery schools expansive. Are there any other classes or experiences that you'd like to share that were really interesting or that you could teach or offers healing modalities?
There's many, many. I kind of look at it as, I always start with that DNA activation to get people plugged in, and then figure out from there what are they looking for. And as I said, I have this toolbox that I can pull from. And I think what I've come to in the past couple of years, especially, is like all of this is really about humanity wanting more love, right? I want in whatever capacity, right? I want to love myself more. I want to love what I do more. I want to love this physical experience more, right? Right. I want to love my body more. I want to love another person more, right? And so if I kind of look at it from that perspective, when I teach, when I do a Zen class, sometimes people will ask me about the different types of Buddhism, right? And they'll say, well, why does Zen differ from Tibetan or Nichiren or and I say it's all to me, all spirituality is like, it's all ice cream. What flavor do you like? Right. And sometimes those flavors, maybe today you want chocolate, but maybe tomorrow you want vanilla. Right. Right. And that is all depending on what's going to get you closer to having more love.
That's an interesting way of phrasing it. And today I would like both chocolate and vanilla. So
let's go.
There are. It's just I guess there's days like that where we talked about the balance. If someone's confused about where to begin, they're getting this call, how would you recommend navigating that? Because if they get called to mystery school, there's an obvious place you said you could start. But if they're not sure if it's Zen Buddhism or that or Reiki, do you recommend doing research on it, just listening to your gut instinct, or do you have any other recommendations?
Yeah, I think research gets us more in our mind. I think it's more about following your intuition and having an experience. So being discerning about who you're working with. So not all people out there offering healing services are going to help you, right? But listening to your intuition about, does this feel right? And not, am I being convinced to do it, but does it feel right? And it might, for me, it's like, and I'll try that. And because of that, that leads me to something else. And because of that, that leads me to something else. And just sort of following your guidance to find where you're meant to be. Right. So, letting go of, like you said, it can be chocolate and vanilla, letting go of how it looks and more about, or how other people say it should be, and more about what feels right to you.
I totally agree. We're all different and different things might work for us. So that's why I recommend people not to be self-conscious if they think something would work for them or something worked for a friend and then isn't working for them, not to give up. There just might be something that works better for you at that time. And we're changing constantly too. So what works for you at one point might stop, and then you could try something else too. There's nothing wrong with that as you grow or your body changes. And thank you for giving that bit of advice, that heads up. Not everyone is great on this journey, which I kind of got blindsided by, because when I started healing and getting spiritual, I was like, wow, this is really helping me. And as you mentioned, I want to share this with others. Surely everyone in this field must have the same intention. And no, there's all sorts of stories. That's a whole other subject. And there's one even, and this I could share because he speaks publicly about it. He's mainly a narcissist abuse coach. His dad is a sociopath, but he's also a meditation instructor and a yoga teacher. And all the students comment, wow, you've really overcome your emotions so well. You've transformed your emotions. And he's just, delighting in that. But his son's like, he never had any to begin with. So he's getting all this praise for something he never really had to deal with. He was just emotionless from the beginning, and it was a perfect hiding place. It's funny when you look at that regard, but it's also, if you look at it from a distance, be careful too when you're out there, and it's okay to dip your toe in the water.
Yeah, I think what I've come to, and I've had my share, right? But that is, does this person, healing, class, teaching, philosophy, whatever, help me to connect more to my own personal power, right? And I think that those who are doing it for their own personal reasons or to make money or whatever, right, are generally framing things that people don't know enough themselves, that they can't trust themselves, right? You can trust me, but you can't trust yourself, right? And I think it's so it's like, what does this make me feel like I'm more connected to spirit? Does this make me feel like I'm more connected to myself and that love that I talked about? And then also, am I feeling empowered over my own life?
That's a perfect way to phrase that. And even if you're feeling uncertain, you'll know. Even if someone tells you don't know, you'll know. And definitely trust that feeling. It's been great talking with you today. If someone heard about something you offered and they want to reach out to you, either to get guidance or they have more questions about what the modalities or offerings you have, or even classes, what's the best way to find you or contact you?
Yeah, so the best way is centerofthesevenrays.com, and it's the number 7. And that's where you can find the people in our center. You can find more out about me, and then you can contact me directly through there.
Thank you for sharing all this great information. It was wonderful having you on. And I have taken classes with Sonya and done healing sessions with Sonya, and I can certainly vouch for her. She's really helped me a lot, especially early on when I was lost. So I do relate to that feeling I described, and she helped me find guidance and get back on the path I'm on, where I did find meaning and purpose, and I'm helping others now. Thanks for tuning in today. We have more great episodes coming up. Please like, follow, and subscribe so you can be notified when they come out. Be seeing you.